A philosophy professor stands before his podium as his class slowly filters into the auditorium. He reaches behind the podium, drawing forth a large glass mason jar that he proceeds to put atop the podium. He then reaches behind the podium once again, this time drawing forth a large bucket of golf balls, which he proceeds to pour into the mason's jar, effectively filling it, upon which he asks his class, "Class, is this jar full?" To which they reply that it is. Without hesitation, the professor reaches behind the podium again, this time drawing forth a large bag of gravel, which he proceeds to pour and shake into the mason's jar, effectively filling the spaces left between the golf balls. Upon which he asks his class, "Class, is this jar full?" To which they reply that indeed it is. He then reaches behind the podium yet again, this time drawing forth a pail of sand, which carefully and slowly he pours into the jar, shaking it to fill the spaces remaining between the golf balls and the gravel. After the laughter of the classroom subsides, he asks his class again, "Class, is this jar full?" To which they reply that unanimously it is. But before he starts up his lecture, he walks over to his desk and grabs the 2 cups of coffee he finds there and pours those into the jar as well. You see, class, this jar is a metaphor for your life. The golf balls, well, they represent the most important things in life. They're the things without which life has no meaning, has no value. These are things like your family, your friends, your health. The gravel, well, the gravel represents the next most important things, the things without which life still exists, but not without great challenge, like our education or our employment. And finally, the sand, well, the sand's the small stuff of life. That's the stuff without which life is still full, still has meaning, still has balance, like trying to ensure that you get home with enough time to catch the next episode of American Idol to see which contestant might be voted off tonight. Whether you catch it or not, it doesn't really matter. You see, as he says, when we start with the big things in life and fill our jar with the golf balls, we have more room to have a more meaningful and full life. But when we start with the small stuff, with the sand, we can never fit in everything of great meaning, value, and happiness to us. As he's about to start his lecture, one of his students raises her hand. "But sir, what does the coffee represent?" I'm glad you asked. I almost forgot. It just goes to show that no matter how full our lives get, we should always have room for a cup of coffee with a friend. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Scott Neal, and today I'm going to be talking to you about a very important message: yetis. But before I get into our topic on yetis, it's imperative that we first dissect the message behind the story I just related: paradigms. And more importantly, the power of paradigm shifting. So what is a paradigm? I ask you, what's a paradigm? Anyone? No? Yeah, you could say it's the way you perceive things. Actually, it's 20 cents. Paradigms no, seriously. As the leader of Guru of Gurus, international best-selling author of The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens, Stephen Covey would share with us, paradigms are the lens through which we view the world. They're perspectives. For instance, I'm an educator, but when asked, often people say, like, "Yo, Scott, really? An educator? I mean, aren't you being a little pretentious? I mean, aren't you really just a teacher?" Well, no. I mean, according to my paradigm, the word to teach derives from the Old English word tekan, which means to fill with knowledge, information, as opposed to the word to educate, which derives from the Latin word educo, meaning to draw forth. One infers that students enter into my classroom empty vessels, and my job is to fill and pack knowledge into their empty heads, where the other denotes that students arrive into my classroom full of understanding, full of curiosity, and together my job is to facilitate their learning through discovery and self-actualization. It's all about paradigms and the power of paradigm shifting. I'm showing you a picture. Take a quick look. It's only going to be up for another second. How many of you saw, by show of hands, a young lady looking away from us? Now, how many of you saw an old woman? That's interesting. What this picture helps to highlight is that in life, often we're presented with only one picture. The unfortunate thing is that we're not open enough to being able to see things from other people's perspective, which prevents us from seeing the whole picture. That's the power of paradigm shifting. I've been blessed over the past 4 years to have been provided with the opportunity of developing an extraordinary experiential leadership program known as HELP, or the Humanitarian Environmental Leadership Program. It's a program open to secondary school students who join me from across Dufferin Peel for a semester, and they get engaged in very meaningful social justice outreach and environmental stewardship projects on a local and international context. But what I find often is the youth coming to join me every semester enter with a certain paradigm. Often I hear them say, "But sir, I am but an individual. I lack the education, the experience, the credentials, the respect, and the voice to affect the types of changes I wish to see in the world." But what I find is when empowered with the right skill sets and the proper opportunities over the course of this semester, not only will they far exceed the expectations of themselves, but that of society as well, and in so doing, affect the changes they wish to see in the world. Allow me to present the HELP program to you briefly and share some of the successes the students have celebrated over the past semester. So now we get to the main topic, yetis. So what is a yeti? It's a beast. Okay. Anyone else? If we look at the core characteristics that define a yeti, what we'll find is that they're rare, unique, powerful, and awe-inspiring creatures. Rare, unique, powerful, awe-inspiring. These are the same characteristics that define leaders. See, in society, we have far too many followers and not enough leaders, which makes leaders both rare and unique. And what makes them powerful is their awe-inspiring words and actions. And the call of the yeti is yet, hence their name, Yeti. So when you share your dreams, visions, goals, ambitions, and aspirations with society, and they say to you, "You're too young, you can't do that, that's impossible," what you're going to turn around and say, as a fellow Yeti, is not yet. For Yeti stands for Youth Empowerment Through Initiative. I'm reminded of the story of a young girl by the name of Hattie Mae Wyatt, who growing up in what was to become the city we now know as Philadelphia in the late 1800s, this was a time of great religious observance, such that churches were often forced to sell admission to Mass weeks in advance. And it was in this setting that we find young Hattie venturing out to attend the Sunday school she so loved, only to return home often dejected, having not found the space within the church to accommodate her. And on one such Sunday, Father Conwell, in making his way from his house to the church, saw young Hattie returning home, quickly raced up, grabbed her up, scooped her up onto his shoulders, making his way into the church to find space in the back corner, and in so doing engaged her in small talk. You know, Hattie, one of these days we're going to have to raise the funds necessary to erect a bigger church so that we can finally celebrate as an entire congregation celebrating Mass in community. Thinking nothing more of the idle chatter, he quickly put her down into a seat he found in the back corner before racing off to get ready for the Mass he was to deliver. That wasn't until a few months later when he received the tragic news of Hattie's unfortunate passing. As was commonplace during what were in effect pioneer times, she succumbed to one of the many diseases that were to run rampant through Philadelphia. And after presiding over her funeral Mass, her mother approached the father saying, "Father, I don't know if you recall having engaged young Hattie in a conversation about erecting a new church. Now, not having heard you spoke of this in any of your Masses, I'm to assume for you this was perhaps a vision or a dream of some long distant time from now. But for Hattie, it was so much more. For her, it was a calling, and I believe she would like you to have this." And into the father's hand, she placed a small red leather purse. Therein was found 57 pennies. Moved to tears, Father Conwell delivered the most powerfully moving Mass the next Sunday as he shared the story of Hattie Mae Wyatt to his congregation and the 57 cents, saying, "For me, I'm a jaded adult. I see a world that is and asks why. Hattie Mae Wyatt sees a world that isn't and asks why not. She wasn't affected by what society was telling her was impossible. She went about and went to do it anyways. Thus inspired, he auctioned off the 57 pennies, eventually raising the money to build what we now know as the Temple, that created the foundation for Temple University and two of the most important hospitals within Philadelphia, creating what we now know as the City of Brotherly Love. This is the power of youth, the power of paradigm shifting. This is a Yeti. But we don't have to look to history or further afield to find Yetis in our midst. In fact, they're all around. Take Craig Kielburger, for instance, who you heard Ryan speak of earlier. At the age of 12, he was both inspired and dumbfounded to hear of the life of Iqbal Masih, a youth of comparable age living in Pakistan, who at a very tragic young age was forced into child slavery, strapped behind a carpet loom for hours, weeks, months, years on end before miraculously escaping and speaking out against the injustices he and others were forced to endure to produce the carpets we purchase, only to be gunned down by the carpet mafia for doing so. Thus inspired, Craig started the largest children helping children's charity in the world, Free the Children, that has gone on 17 years later to build 650 schools internationally, providing education, healthcare, sanitation, and clean water to over 1 million children and their families. Or take Bilal Rajan, who at the age of 4 was so devastated to hear of the tragic loss of life in his ancestral home country of India following the massive swath of earthquakes that befell the nation, that, thus inspired, he took up the clementines on his kitchen table and went door to door selling them, raising $350 for the relief effort. Fast forward 14 years later, he has now raised over $5 million for a variety of charitable causes as Canada's youth ambassador to UNICEF. Or take Ryan Hurljack, who at the age of 6 in kindergarten learned, devastatingly so, that youth his own age were dying every single day due to lack of access of something we all take for granted, clean drinking water. And thus, over the next few months, he took up additional chores to raise the $2,000 necessary to dig a well for the children of Angolo Primary School in Uganda. Later going on to found the Ryan's Well Foundation that has dug 266 similar projects providing clean water and sanitation to over 435,000 people. This is the power of youth. This is the power of paradigm shifting. These are Yetis. So you might be asking yourself, well, how do I become a Yeti? Allow me to present you with the 7 steps in becoming a Yeti. Step 1, identify. Identify what makes you passionate, what issues enrage you. Next, research. Find out all there is to learn about the subject, become a subject expert. And next, share everything you've learned with your friends, recruit others of similar mind, and educate them as to everything you've learned. Join an organization doing the work you wish to do, or create your own, remembering to establish a clear mission statement that articulates well who you are, what you wish to achieve. Set yourselves some goals, and ensuring that you're applying the SMART principles of specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and most importantly, time-bound to hold yourselves accountable to the vision you wish to achieve. And finally, actually not finally, but delegate. Do a self-assessment piece as to your team. What are the goals, interests, skill sets? And parlay those against the different roles, responsibilities, and tasks that need done. And then go out and execute the plan and raise awareness to your cause. And most importantly, step 7, have fun. Celebrate all your successes, no matter how small or large. And now empowered as fellow Yetis, I'm reminded of the quote from actress Audrey Hepburn that once said, "Nothing is impossible. In fact, the word itself says, I am possible." So the next time you share your goals, dreams, visions, ambitions, and aspirations with the world, and they say, "You're too young. You can't do that. That's impossible." As a fellow Yeti, I want you to reply, "Not yet, but soon." Thank you very much. Join the movement.